Good morning and welcome to the 2026 Borough DD Council Legislative Town Hall. I'm Kathy Rocho Kelly, Associate Vice President of Entitlements at AHRC New York City and Chairperson of the Manhattan Developmental Disabilities Council. On behalf of all of the 5 DD councils, we welcome you and thank you for joining us this morning. Although the 5 councils have each had legislative events at this time of year for many years, for the past several years, the 5 councils have joined together to host a virtual gathering of members of the state legislature and other members of government to come and hear from members of the DD community what their current concerns and issues are at this time, particularly as we are in the process of negotiating the upcoming state budget. This year, we are changing the format a little bit and trying something new by having a series of panel discussions with representatives from the legislature as well as government participating in the panels. A few housekeeping rules to keep in mind before we start. First, everyone will be muted throughout the event, and only the panelists will be able to unmute themselves. This event is being recorded, so you are able to keep your cameras off if you so choose. Please use the chat feature to enter any questions you may have during the event. We do have a very packed agenda and tight frame, so we will try to get to the questions. In addition, we will be providing a summary of the questions and answers within 2 to 3 weeks of this event. And finally, please be respectful in the chat. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our MC for today's event, Winnie Schiff. Winnie is the CEO of the Interagency Council. Like myself and so many of our colleagues, Winnie began her career as a direct support professional and has always been a fierce advocate for people with developmental disabilities. Winnie also comes to us with a parent's perspective as well. Please join me in welcoming Winnie Schiff.
Thank you so much, Kathy. As Kathy mentioned, every year the 5 borough New York City DD councils join together to work on supporting the field's priorities in the New York State budget. As providers, families, and self-advocates, we welcome our legislators to join us to discuss the essential supports and services that must be funded and our other legislative priorities for the year in the areas of adult services for people with IDD, health, early intervention, and special education. Today, we'll have 5 panel discussions, each approximately 20 minutes long, led by moderators from the DD councils. The 5 topics are workforce, residential services and aging, health equity, early intervention, and special education. Members of the panels include our elected officials, government representatives, parents, and self-advocates. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce OPWDD Commissioner Willow Baer. Willow cares deeply about ensuring that New Yorkers with IDD are supported and included, and shares our commitment to people receiving supports and their families. As a family member herself, she knows the importance of our work. OPWDD is the 2nd largest state agency overseeing the work of state-provided services and over 400 nonprofit provider agencies. Thanks so much for joining us, Commissioner Baer.
First, good morning. Can you hear me, Winnie?
Gotcha.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Well, I won't take up much time. I just wanted to say good morning and thank you so much for putting together such an exciting event. I see several hundred people joining, and that's really, really incredible. I'm honored to be here with so many colleagues in the state legislature, especially at a time of year that's so busy for those of us in state government. We're looking forward to seeing 1 House bills come out next week, and this was already such a good budget year with a proposed executive budget that includes so many exciting initiatives to make New York more affordable for everyone, but specifically for our workforce, which we know could really use whatever they can get. And this is all during a time when the federal government is slashing funding and cutting support for people with disabilities. So Governor Hochul's continued investment to the field and growing the prior $4 billion investment by another 1.7% was just very exciting. And I'm thrilled to be here to hear from you all what you think all of the other priorities need to be going forward. So thanks for including me.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now we have a message from our friend and longtime champion, Assemblymember Jeff Dinowitz. Assemblymember Dinowitz chairs the Codes Committee, which is a very powerful committee in the Assembly. He serves on the Rules Committee, Ways and Means, and the Health Committee, and he's an outspoken supporter for our people and our services. Here's a word from Assemblymember Dinowitz.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz. It is so good to be able to speak to you this morning. I've been coming to your events now, I don't want to say how many years, but it's a long time and I never miss one. I do miss the days when we used to go to the breakfast in the Bronx in person. This isn't in person, but we can speak to everybody around the city. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm also grateful for the work that all of you do, the hard work that everybody does, not only the workers, but the providers, the advocates, everybody together. You really make a difference. And we have a lot of work to do in Albany, especially on the state budget. And the work that we do is only possible because of what you do, your advocacy, your constant presence, and presenting us with information that we need to know is very important, and it really makes a difference. I know this year we have a lot of work to do, for example, on early intervention, certainly on funding in the budget, generally speaking, COLAs, and so on. This is the type of stuff we've been fighting for every single year. And sometimes it seems we have the same exact battles every single year, but we must never give up. But my ability as a longtime member of the Assembly to get things done really depends on having partners in the community such as all of you. So I just want to say thank you. You are all heroes that make a huge difference in the lives of countless people. And I look forward to working with you for many, many years to come.
Thank you, Assemblymember Dinowitz. Before we get into our panels, I wanted to mention that Commissioner Bear will also be participating in one of our panels later on. So now I'd like to turn it over to Lisa Valia. She is Provider Chairperson of the Queens DD Council and the moderator of the Workforce Panel.
Thank you, Winnie. Thank you so much for being our MC today. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Commissioner, we're so glad that you could be here, not only for the introduction, but for our panel discussion later on. So thank you for that. And also thank you for participating live in yesterday's aging conference. We got a lot of great feedback. We appreciate you being there. So I'm Lisa Valia. I'm here today as the chair of the Queens Council, but I'm also the CEO of CUSAC, Quality Services for the Autism Community. I'm a board member of IAC, and I'm just so glad to work with all of my colleagues throughout the 5 boroughs on the other councils. It's always a pleasure. I'm going to be covering workforce. This panel is about workforce, which we're also calling the care force. Everyone knows, especially of our providers and parents, the importance of our DSPs. We could not do the work that we do without our direct care workforce. They are the backbone of all of our organizations, especially when you're looking at residential and day programs where ongoing support is needed. So today's panel, we have Senator Fahey, who is she chairs the Committee on Disabilities. She's been a champion in our field for many years, and she tried very hard to be here in person today. But we do have a video, and many of you know that she's proposed several impactful bills to support our DSPs to help offset costs for them. So we're going to show her video, and then Winnie's going to talk a little bit about those bills that we've been advocating for. So.
Hello, I'm New York State Senator Pat Fahey, proud to represent the 46th Senate District here in New York, and I'm honored to serve as chair of the Senate Disabilities Committee. I'm committed to building New York where individuals with disabilities are fully included in our community and supported in the workforce. That's why in this year's state budget, I am fighting for the 2.7% inflationary increase for the DSPs, disability providers, in the budget. Our providers are essential partners which help lead and deliver crucial services for our families. Legislatively, I have introduced several bills: Employer Reasonable Accommodations Fund, a Care Force Home Ownership Incentive Grant, the Wheelchair Right to Repair Bill, emergency staffing plans legislation, as well as strengthening support for our students who are living with disabilities, and more. When we invest in accessibility, opportunity, and stability, we strengthen not just individuals and families, we strengthen our entire state. We must do better serving those individuals with disabilities. I thank you for all you do to help build a more inclusive New York.
Winnie, would you like to just go into a little bit more detail regarding the bills?
Sure. So we support all of Senator Fahey's bills that she mentioned, but we do have the three at the top of our list have to do with our Care Force. So the Care Force includes a lot of different direct support titles that are clinical titles, and of course, including our DSPs. And the first one is to establish a Care Force affordable housing lottery preference in this year's state budget. So we're looking for state-supported housing programs that would prioritize DSPs and those other frontline workers for affordable units near their workplaces, supporting workplace stability and community continuity. And that happens to be Senate Bill 8676. The next bill on our top three list is to establish an employer assisted housing matching grant program in this year's budget. So nonprofit human services agencies lack the tax advantages available to for-profit employers that offer housing benefits, but a state employer assisted housing matching grant program that would provide a 50% match up to $3,000 per worker annually would be used to support employees with security deposits, rent support, emergency arrears, or first-time home buyer costs, reducing turnover and strengthening our service community. And that Senate bill is 8672. And then the third would create a Sonny Mae Care Force homeownership incentive. So Sonny Mae should establish a Care Force program offering enhanced down payment assistance up to $20,000 and reduced mortgage interest rates of 0.5 to 1% below market for frontline care workers. And this would expand access to home ownership for DSPs and similar workers and align with existing state incentives for other essential professions. That bill is Senate 8675.
Great. Thank you so much, Winnie. So in addition, I mean, everyone is probably aware what we're advocating for the targeted inflationary increase. We know the governor has put in 1.7% toward this initiative, and we're advocating for that additional 1% to bring us to the 2.7%, which is in line with the CPI and helps offset costs associated with inflation. So as we go into the rest of the panel, I want to welcome, we have Assembly Member Joanne Simon here and Senator Jessica Scarcella Spanton, who will both be live in person. Welcome. Thank you both. I sent you some questions in advance, but we will start with Assemblyman Member Simon. And for those of you back in December who attended the roundtables in New York City, you had the pleasure of hearing Assemblymember Simon, and she is a champion and very knowledgeable about all the great work in the IDD community. And so I welcome you. And if you want to say a few words before we get into questions, that would be lovely.
Sure. I want to say thank you. First of all, I am amazed. You have 420 participants so far. That is astounding and very, very exciting, and really does my heart good to see how many people are here. participating in this. As you know, I mean, one huge issue, of course, is our workforce, and I'm happy to address that. But also, you know, the independence of so many people with IDD who really need our help to be independent, but also can be independent, and we need to be as encouraging and supportive of that as possible. So that's kind of the lens from which I come at this, and I'm happy to pass this along to my colleague, Senator Scarcella-Spanton.
Hello. Thank you so much, everybody. And yeah, over 400 participants is a huge deal. I think it shows. I have to be honest, we deal with so many different advocates up in Albany, but the IDD community has the best advocates of all time. So you guys should really give yourselves a pat on the back and a big round of applause. And I can't wait to get into some of these questions, but I always say, you know, what are the core principles that we need to focus on? Workforce, wages, and your stories, right? Your stories are the stories that actually are changing the hearts and minds. And those stories help benefit the workers, the DSPs that you all rely on. So I cannot thank you enough, because I think that when people hear the difficulties that this community goes through, or the families of this community goes through, it really does change the hearts and minds. And, you know, I work very closely with my colleague, Senator Fahey, and of course, Assemblymember Joanne Simon. And I wanted to just say all the bills that are on your priority list, if I'm not on them already, I will make sure I get right on those. I have Brian Early, my legislative director. I was texting him before while you were going through them. So I'm looking forward to getting into the discussion, and I'm really honored to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And we also have a self-advocate who is part of the panel, Eric Portes. If you'd like to just introduce yourself, and then we'll get right into the questions. Thank you for being here as well.
Thank you for having me. Hi, I'm Eric Portes. Happy Friday, guys, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay. So both Assemblymember Simon and Scarcella-Spanton, you'll be receiving the same questions. So we'll start with the Assemblywoman. So as you know, Governor Hochul has supported the IDD community through investments over the many years. Several years she's been governor. And in her proposed budget, like I said, it's a 1.7% increase. We're advocating for an additional 1% to bring it to the 2.7%. Do you think your one house budgets will include this additional 1%, bringing it to a total of 2.7%?
Well, you know, we haven't finalized the one house budget yet, but I feel relatively confident that both one houses will address this issue. On the whole, I would say that the legislators, at least in my house, are very supportive of increasing that targeted inflationary increase. I think everybody recognizes that 2.7 is really not all that much. It's a very modest request as far as that goes. And that really we need to make up for a lot of lost time. So I think a lot of members would probably support more. The likelihood of success on that this year is probably a little slimmer, given all of the other things that are going on that are really taking money out of our budget in many ways and giving the state fewer resources to call upon. But I think that you have a lot of friends in the legislature when it comes to the target inflationary increase.
Great, that's wonderful to hear. Senator?
Yes, and I echo that. So we're still in the process of finalizing the one house, but you have so many advocates, and I know that Senator Fahey, who chairs the committee, has been really pushing for this, and I really do feel that we'll get to a good place. And I agree. I think that with everything going on, I wish there could be so much more investment, but this is I think it's a very humble request, and it's something that I have not heard pushback on. So knock on wood, I never celebrate anything till I see it, but we will certainly continue to make sure we're loud in our advocacy.
Do either of you have any thoughts or comments about Senator Fahey's bills and how that could support our workforce?
Of course.
I would say that I don't know who the assembly sponsors are, but nobody has sent them around that I'm aware of. So I'm just learning about them now. Whether they are likely to pass this year is not something I can opine on. I need to know it a little bit more and see what the dynamics are. But it certainly seems like there's some reason to look at some of these issues. One of the things that I think is the most frustrating is the fact that most of these things are already a matter of federal law. Not a creation of a fund, but the employer, the fund for reasonable accommodations. It's ridiculous. It's what the ADA was passed in 1990. And if employers haven't thought about this, they should have a long time ago, right? And it's also the cost of most accommodations is actually very minimal. So, but I don't think it's a bad idea to set up a fund, because if nothing else, it basically says you have no excuse now. And to that extent, I think it's a great idea. Although, as I said, it's a little bit frustrating since I don't see why we should have to do this. But I have also passed bills that required at the state level something that was absolutely required at the federal level, because people don't pay attention to federal law very often. And that was one of my bills to include using the word dyslexia, for example, in an IEP, which everybody said they couldn't do for 45 years, and in fact was a matter of federal law. So sometimes it's helpful to have a state law that says what it is that the feds already said. And in my mind, some of these bills are along those lines. And so I think it's fine. It's great to do them.
Yeah, I agree. I do think having a dedicated, and I'll take a look at all of the bills. And again, if I'm not on them, I'm sure probably many of them I will hop on. But I do think having a dedicated fund, I think right now is the moment to be, as a state as big as New York, is meeting the moment of what's lacking from the federal government. I think it's our responsibility to get prepared to do that, because we've already seen a lot of detrimental actions. I have met with providers on both sides of the bridge, on Staten Island, in Brooklyn, and I think everybody's really scared and they're already starting to feel it. So I would love to take a closer look at those bills. And I always feel the need to make sure that I mention this as well, but I chair the Veterans Committee, and I often think that the Veterans Committee and Disability Committee actually really do go hand in hand, because of some of the service-related wounds, TBIs, things of that nature that these members come home with. So I try to work together as much as I can to make sure we're tying these two issues together, because they are really interconnected. But I would love to take a look at that bill, and I do think it would be helpful to have a dedicated fund.
Thank you. I am sure Winnie and her team are taking notes to follow up with you both. Assembly, especially since in the Assembly we thought something comparable to Senator Fahey's bills was being developed, and maybe it just hasn't been disseminated at this point. But
Could be.
Yep. Okay. So, Eric, we know how the workforce is critical to our providers, but why don't you tell us the impact of the staff in your life?
So basically, all I could say is that it impacted me in a really huge way. I feel like with them, they've helped me become a better person, and I feel like I wouldn't be the person I am today without them, because of how much support they've given me. I have my home health aide, my comment worker, and my mentors, which are a big part of my support system. My home health aide, which is, which he really helps me with, when I forget things, he reminds me, he gives me medication. He provides me that emotional support that I wouldn't have from anything else. And also it feels, and like we're kind of close, like almost like family, and I could say everything about my mentors and my comment workers. So with my comment workers, we work on life skills, preparing for emergencies, budgets, and how to solve problems, and how I consider life choices and consequences that come with that, so that when those things happen, I'm already prepared for it. And my mentors, they help me so much in my college. So I go to BMCC and they go with me to classes, and they help me understand, you know, how the class works, what to expect from the class. You know, if there's any problems, you know, I can go to public affairs and other things like that. So I feel like really cared for, and I feel like there's like a massive family community between all three of them, and that's why I honestly think that this percentage increase is really important, to not only to help them, but to help them support us and their families, you know, because I feel like it benefits everyone in that type of way.
So much,
Excellent.
Eric.
And
Well said.
Eric, Garrick, I was going to say, I really loved what you said about how important that workforce is to you. My brother has a physical disability, and I just remember my earliest memories. He's younger than me, so my earliest memories are sitting at Staten Island University Hospital, and he had these two physical therapists, Camille and April, and he had them throughout his entire childhood, and they were like an extension of him. Then he had another physical therapist, Waleed, and these people really did become like extended family. So I grew up seeing how important different workforce, but how important that workforce was to my brother's physical development throughout his life. And I really appreciated what you said, because it is so important to have someone that you know and that you trust. And that's why I think fighting for these increases is so important. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
No, I agree that that's terrific. And I think, the point about this being, essentially what it takes a village, right? Is that it's critical for success. It's critical for your emotional well-being as well as for the care workers. And, I'm chairing the mental health committee. And so one of the things that I always think about is the concerns that so many people in the IDD community have with regard to isolation. Right. And so just because you have a developmental disability doesn't mean you also don't have emotional support needs. And I think it's very important that we recognize that, number one, but also we recognize that our care force are among those people who are providing that kind of support on a day-to-day basis to our folks with IDD.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So for the next question for Assembly Member and Senator. We know that you have both been champions of the IDD community. You come to these events, you support us, you're knowledgeable about the issues. But what can families and providers and self-advocates do to get more support from your colleagues, from the legislature, the governor's office? What are some suggestions that you have for all of us?
I would say, listen, I think that it's our responsibility a lot of the time to meet people where they're at. But I know that that's not always the case, right? That's not always the reality. I think sharing your stories, right? Sometimes it is just, it's not as hard as people always think. And if there is anybody who is giving you a hard time about a meeting, you let me know. I trust me and Joanne will find our colleagues if they're not meeting with you. But I think sometimes just calling, as particularly the district office, right? You shouldn't have to always come all the way up to Albany to meet with us. I'm here right now in my district. It's a Friday. It's a crazy time of year, but we also aren't in session between the end of June, middle of June, all the way until December, right? So, the district office should be, in my opinion, the place where you're able to meet with your elected official, and just simply, honestly, pick up a call the district office, call the Albany office. There's usually a couple, send an email. There's always a way to find somebody. And like I said, I put my email in the chat. If you're having trouble with I won't out anyone, I promise, but I will have a little conversation with them. But I think hearing your story and just having that one-on-one kind of conversation is so helpful. And I know all of you do really make that trek up to Albany and come up for Advocacy Day, which is incredibly important. But what I will say is sometimes Albany is so chaotic, right? You're meeting with so many different people. When you're in the district, you have more of that one-on-one kind of attention. Because Albany at 10 a.m. to 4 o'clock, they feel like different weeks sometimes. Yes. So I would say definitely try to get that one-on-one attention in the district office would be my advice.
Yeah. I don't disagree with any of that. I think one of the things that I might suggest as well is that, legislators respond to what's going on in their communities, right? And so being in community really matters. It's very easy for people to be overlooked. And I think that if folks go to community meetings, or parents, for example, or caregivers are able to participate in other aspects of civic life, that can be very helpful as well, because it's really about radar screen, and it's very easy for folks to fall off that radar screen, right? There have been various battles around group homes, et cetera, supported housing. One of the things we're fighting for in the legislature is some more supported housing, right? Which is very important for many people with disabilities. People are becoming more and more accepting of that. And I think that they are because people are talking about it more. So however it is you do that, whether it's through your church or synagogue, your mosque, any way that you can bring up these issues and develop relationships with people, because then people get a sense of who you are and what your needs are that they would not have known about. So yes, coming to Albany is crazy. I mean, it's important to do that, but it is chaotic. There must have been thousands of people there last week on Tuesday. I don't know if you remember. It was like a particularly crazy day. But so that's important. But establishing a relationship with the district office also important. But also important is not realizing that to realize that government responds to what's going on in society. Government responds to what's going on in community. Local legislators respond to what's going on locally. And so the more you can be a factor in that, somebody who, I remember years ago, Gary Nuzzi, when he joined the community board too, the community board had to deal with access in a very different way. And embraced his engagement, right? And he was a gentleman with cerebral palsy. And until that, it wasn't on their radar screen, right, on a regular basis. So I think anything that can be done to help put these things on people's radar screens, that it's more of a natural thing to always think about, to not be an afterthought, I think is part of our goal as well.
Thank you. So we have about 1 minute left for this panel.
Sorry.
It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you. I just want to give each of you maybe 30 seconds to just make some closing remarks. And Eric, I'll start with you.
I honestly think that the 2.7 is really good and really beneficial to everybody, because currently there have been a lot of cases to where like DSPs have either left or pursued another career because of the inflammation. And I feel like it's not personal at all. They're just doing them, or they're doing what makes them feel good. But in on honesty, I think that if we get that 2.7 even a little bit more, that DSPs will be willing to pursue their passion of helping people, because I think everyone needs a DSP. They need that mental support and they need that physical support, because DSPs needs to know that we all love them and we all care for them and we respect them because of the passion, the hard work that they put for us. And I feel like the 1.7 isn't enough, not to come at anyone, but I think that even it's just the 2.7 or even above would help them keep up and help change lives in a way that we never thought possible.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We agree.
Yes.
Okay. So just maybe 10-second farewell, Senator, and then Assemblywoman.
Thank you so much, everybody. Eric, you did such a tremendous job. Thanks to every single advocate on here. I promise you, Brian's on here. We got all the one pagers. I'm looking at all the bills. I have no doubt that I will sign on to all of them. I like to do my due diligence. I like to look at them. So I don't always sign on to everything. Joanne, no, there's 10,000 bills out there. So sometimes it's not always a lack of support. It's just, it needs to be put in my eyesight. But that is what you guys did today. So you did your jobs, and I really appreciate you, and thank you for having me. Thanks for the work you all do. We'll keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
So thank you. I agree completely with Senator Scarcella-Spanton. There are a lot of bills. We do try and look at all of them. And sometimes something is in the Senate and we don't yet have an assembly sponsor, and I don't know what the story is there, but we'll certainly look at all of those bills. But getting things in front of us is important, and we have so many things coming at us all at once. So sometimes it's a little battle for the attention span there. But we will do our best, and certainly want to be supportive in any way that we can. And I want to thank all of you for the organizers for setting this up, but also all of you participants. And Eric, thank you so much for what you've contributed. You were great, and you have a tremendous future. You know, you might want to consider running for office.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Winnie, back to you.
Okay, so that was such a great panel. This event is all about getting our things in front of you. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And I want to just talk about 3 things that I heard. One is everyone needs a DSP. I fully agree with that. I always feel like I need a DSP. And then another one is about telling your stories. You know, that is the thing that legislators take away from a conversation with you. You know, that they can read all the other stuff on a position paper. And then something that Assemblymember Simon said, and that is we don't ever want to fall off that radar. So thank you so much, everybody. Now I'd love to turn it over to Rochelle Kivanowski. She is Family Vice Chair of the Brooklyn DD Council and the moderator of the Residential and Aging Panel. Rochelle?
Thanks, Winnie. I think many people might be hearing these days about the issue of aging, in particular for our community. And I myself am an aging parent, so I will start with that. I am also the family vice chair of the Brooklyn DD Council, and I co-chair of the Care Design Individual and Family Advisory Board and a member of New York City Fair Executive Committee. But today I am here as a member of the Commissioner's Task Force on Aging, and I am delighted to introduce our panel members, who is Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, Commissioner Willow Bear, parent advocate Carlene Braithwaite, and if they could all be highlighted, please, Pat. Here we are. And I'm told that Assemblymember Seawright. Great to see you. And I'm told that Assemblymember Farah Soufran Forrest is here. Oh, there she is. Okay, can you please highlight her as well, Pat? Thank you. So before we go on.
I'm sorry, I don't see her. Oh, there she is.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for participating in this important panel. I'll just start with some brief introductions. You've all met the Commissioner already. And in particular, I want to thank the Commissioner for launching her task force on aging. And I'll give her a moment to talk about that in very shortly. Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, it's great to see you again. She represents the Upper East Side, Yorkville, and Roosevelt Island in Manhattan since 2014, so she is a very experienced legislator. And that has one of the largest concentration of seniors in the entire borough of Manhattan. She is currently the chair of the Assembly Committee on Aging, and she is also on the commission that developed the New York State Master Plan on Aging. And she was also the past chair of the Assembly Committee on People with Disabilities. So I just thought that she would be the absolute expert to have here today. And I also want to welcome Assemblymember Farah Soufran Forrest, who represents the Assembly District 57 in Brooklyn, my home borough, consisting of Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, and parts of Bedford-Stuyvesant and Crown Heights since 2020. And she's been exceptionally busy, I see, as an advocate for working people, an advocate for tenants' rights, healthcare, and carceral reform. She is also a member of the Assembly Committee on Aging and chairs the subcommittee on intergenerational care, which I think is something we're going to be addressing for the next decades. So, and last but certainly not least is Carlene Braithwaite, who is a parent, and she'll talk a little bit more about that shortly, and an advocate for all of us in the IDD community. So as I said earlier, we're hearing about aging a lot. The commissioner and I just participated in a conference yesterday on aging in people with IDD, and I feel like I'm aging rapidly through all this. But we also know that on the whole state level that we have now the New York State Master Plan on Aging, because there's a recognition of the need for more direct care workers, for accessible transportation, recreation activities, customized healthcare, and of course, long-term housing. And today we're going to ask our panelists to focus on the issue of housing in particular, because it's really top of mind for many people in the IDD community, both individuals and their caregivers. And we'll try and figure out how does the Master Plan on Aging address the particular needs of people with IDD. So first, I'd like to start with Commissioner Bear, who started this new task force, just to speak to us a little bit about what you hope to accomplish.
Sure. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks for serving on the task force and having me here today. So you mentioned the Master Plan on Aging, which was an incredible body of work overseen by the Department of Health and the State Office for Aging. There's a lot of recommendations, a lot of really rich sort of data and conversations that were a part of that plan. For the service system that I oversee, though, in developmental disabilities, it became clear to me that we have a very specific and nuanced set of issues in the IDD community. And the task force was really set up to dig in and make very specific recommendations to me about how we can address what's really the first generation of senior citizens in the IDD community, right? When we deinstitutionalized and moved people into the community, the life expectancy was much lower for people with developmental disabilities than it is now. So nationwide, we have people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, which is incredible, right? It's a great problem to have. In New York State, we have 15,000 people in the IDD system already over the age of 60, about 3,700 of which are in the boroughs, and about 80% of which live in certified residential services. So we know that we've got this aging population, we have aging caregivers, and that we need to figure out as a system, be it families, self-advocates, partners in the legislature, providers, state government, we have this sort of novel problem to solve together. So that was really what led to putting together the Task Force on Aging. And that task force has experts in healthcare, aging systems, IDD service systems, and people with lived experience aging within the system. And so they've been hard at work, and I'm really excited to get some of those recommendations later this year so we can have a very concrete work plan to come up with some solutions together.
Wow. Thank you so much, Commissioner. That was really helpful, I think, for many of us. So while this new generation of aging people with IDD have many of the same needs as the general aging population, but we have some unique needs. And the most particular one, I would say, is that we have a significant number of older people with IDD and also middle-aged people who within the next number of years will be part of that older cohort who are still living with aging family members. It's different than the general aging population, who are generally, their caregivers are younger than they are. In our situation, our caregivers are older than the person with IDD, and that creates a particular stress. So I'd like to ask the question of everybody. I want to start with what specific supports, both practical and financial, can be provided for aging caregivers to help them keep their family members at home and to avoid a future crisis where family members are no longer able to or available to continue. And the last thing anybody wants is a crisis. So I'd like to start first with Carlene Braithwaite to speak from the parents' perspective.
Thank you, Rochelle. It's so good to see all of you here, both on the panel and so many faces that I recognize and I've had the pleasure to advocate with. I am the parent of a young man who's now about 33 years old. So he is no longer young. He's aging rapidly. But as Rochelle indicated, his parents, both me and his father, who's here with me, are aging even more rapidly, it seems, every day. I have to get over what I call my Peter Pan syndrome and admit to myself that, we're not as young as we used to be. We have my son at home with us. What is key is our ability to continue to do this as long as we can until we have in place a plan of next steps for him. That is important for all parents to have the plan. But it is equally important for us to look to the supports that are there, the state supports, and know that the state has a plan. And when we look forward, we see an indication that, keep going. We're looking for you to go as long as you can. And, we're willing to do that. But there is a reality. And it only adds additional stress to parents when they don't see on the horizon a plan for that support when they can no longer support. It causes anxiety, and one does not know exactly how to deal with that. I'm fairly familiar with the supports. We all know they're great. This state has probably the best plan of any state in the nation. But when we look at them with granular, we look particularly, we know there are many gaps. And we're not here to talk about particulars, but we know they're there. And we need to be very realistic on how they can be operated so as to support families going forward. So I think it's extremely, extremely important. I know for myself, for my husband, we look to the state to, improve the system. We are willing to be stakeholders and participate in conversations like this, to lend a hand wherever we can to do this. But it really needs to be done. We cannot start closing doors, start making it harder for individuals to get certified housing if they think that is their best option. If we have supportive housing, we need to know that the supports are there, both the technical supports. We live in a wonderful age of technology. There are things that we can do that support all of this that I never thought would be here. And I woke up one morning and they're there. I can ask AI anything. And as long as I double check to make sure they're right, they're there. Alexa supports me. But how can we practically get those supports in the supportive setting where folks in IDD of all spectrums, those that are very, very capable and those that may have some more challenges, those that have health concerns, we really have to think about this in a broader perspective. And so I'll end there, Rochelle. If you come back around, I can say a little bit about experiences with those in supports who are aging. I have a group home on my block here in Brooklyn, and I watch those individuals. I watch them go out every morning and get on their buses to go to their day hab. I've watched them for probably at least 20 to 25 years. They're not
Thank you, Carlene.
They're not getting any younger either. So I'll shut up. You have to shut me up, Rochelle.
And I did.
Okay.
So, because we only have another 5 minutes.
I apologize. Go.
So, just briefly, for the assembly members here, How do you see the current master plan on aging helping people in Carlene's situation? I saw many recommendations there for family caregivers. How can we adapt them for our IDD community? Who wants to jump in? Assemblymember Seawright?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me today. It's great to see our wonderful OPWDD Commissioner Willow Bear. And Carlene, your story, thank you for sharing that with us. My grandmother, my only aunt, lived with my grandmother her entire life, and my grandmother constantly worried what would happen to my aunt after she passed. And so I appreciate hearing from you, especially this morning, and thank you, Rochelle, and also to Winnie and Kathy Kelly, and I want to give a quick shout out to two wonderful advocates and constituents, Mary Krasner and Mary McGuire Weaver, for joining today, and my colleague Farah Forrest Safrant, who is a sister in Albany and is working on so many wonderful initiatives, and it's great to have you on the Aging Committee. So the master plan on aging must take an integrated approach that connects aging policy with disability services. So this is a particularly good question. Housing policy, transportation, healthcare planning. Families navigating these systems often face fragmented programs across multiple agencies, which can make it very difficult, as you've pointed out, to access. So to help move this forward, I've sponsored legislation to support a comprehensive statewide approach to aging and long-term care planning. I'm sponsoring legislation that with the New York State Master Plan on Aging provides a bond act, Assembly Bill 09611, which would authorize the creation of a $5 billion bond subject to voter approval in November 2026 general election. This fund is a key recommendations for the State Master Plan on Aging. As you know, it was released in 2025 after years of stakeholder engagement and public hearings. It included more than 100 proposals addressing critical needs such as senior housing, transportation networks, senior centers, community-based services that would directly benefit older adults, including those with developmental disabilities. Equally important is transparency and accountability in implementing these proposals. That's why I've sponsored the Master Plan on Aging Dashboard Act, Assembly Bill 10168, which would require the New York State Office for Aging to maintain a public-facing, interactive, real-time dashboard on its website to track progress on each recommendation in the master plan, including legislative and budgetary developments. In addition, I sponsor legislation to establish the Office of New York State Benefits Coordination, Assembly Bill 09623, which would document and track benefit programs across state government to create a statewide benefits portal and universal benefits application. This would make it significantly easier for families caring for individuals with IDD to access services and supports without having to navigate multiple complex systems. Ultimately, the master plan must take a whole of government approach that recognizes the overlapping needs of older adults and people with disabilities. Most importantly, it must ensure that self-advocates, caregivers, and families are part of shaping the solution so that New Yorkers with IDD can age with dignity, independence, and the support they deserve.
Thank you so much. We're really at time, but I'm going to take this moment to give Assemblymember Forrest. Are you still here?
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Because of the timing, I just want to, of course, support all of the things that Chair Seawright has said. I mean, this has been a long and ongoing conversation around supports and specifically people with IDD. And so I used to be a DSP worker. I also was a nurse. I also took care of my father who lived for many years with Alzheimer's. And the idea is, yes, housing. In my own district, we prioritized a piece of state land and developed it not only to be affordable, but to fit many needs that would incorporate around older adults, right? But that's 1024 Fulton Street aside. We really are working very hard to make sure that when the master plan says caregivers, we are supporting caregivers. Caregivers have the same problem everybody else has. They have jobs. They need respite care, which is one of the things that I really am excited that the master plan had pointed out. The fact that people need time. One of the things while I was in school taking care of my dad is that while I was in finals, it would have been nice to have somebody else step in and help with medication, not make it difficult to renew home attendant services that helped a lot. And so, again, my chair has said it all, but there is so much, and it isn't different than anybody else. Everybody needs support, and it's simple. It should be as simple like I need help, and this is my needs. Food. I need food. I need security. I need housing help. It should be simple to just say, look, I'm doing Lord's work over here, but can you help me out? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member. I obviously was overambitious about what we could accomplish in our 20 minutes, because we also were going to talk about more specifics about housing and also the issues of people who are aging in our group homes and what kind of physical modifications and other modifications need to happen. So I'm hoping we can have some more discussion about this together so that we can come up with some creative ideas to address the particular needs of our community. I want to thank all the panelists again. You have been really helpful and wonderful, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle. Yeah, we could probably spend the entire morning on those two topics. As a parent who's also worried about, we need to be able to die. We need the peace to know that our loved ones are going to be taken care of. And it's really about planning and coordination. And we're so glad that the state master plan on aging is being worked on, and the commissioner's task force. We're grateful to be at the table, and we are looking forward to some outcomes that will support us. Our next panel is being led by Joanne Siegel. She's our provider chairperson of the Bronx DD Council and the moderator of the Health Equity Panel.
Hello, everyone. I'm hoping that we can have our panelists join us. And so I'd like to have them spotlighted if possible with us. And I believe we have Assembly Member Amy Paulin also in. Okay, let's see. Holly Saab, thank you. Okay, and one more, the Assembly Member Amy Paulin. She was on earlier.
See her. She could send a message in the chat.
Okay, while you're checking to see, and she had a staff person, Shelley, who also was joining us. I know we're. Okay, so while we're waiting, I'm going to basically start the panel, and we are going to talk this afternoon about health equity. And it's widely known that people with disabilities face many obstacles to accessing healthcare services. And in fact, 2023, the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, declared people with disabilities as a population with health disparities across the nation. So very often, people with disabilities face stigma and discrimination and receive poor quality services. As a result of this inequity, increasing numbers of persons with multiple complex and often preventable chronic conditions face a healthcare system that is insufficiently funded and educationally and structurally unprepared for them. This panel will focus on how the proposed New York State budget for fiscal years 26-27 will address the healthcare issues. So joining me today, I am the president of the Bronx DD Council, and I also am the co-director of the Rose F. Kennedy University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. And so we have today joining us Ali Saab. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Okay, terrific. I'm going to ask everyone on the panel if you could unmute your. Okay. Holly is a lifelong upstate New Yorker and comes representing the Chief Disability Office of the Governor in Albany, New York. She's honored to be part of that department, the Chief Disability Office, and she is part of the Executive Chamber team and has the opportunity each day to serve as a voice for people with disabilities. Holly is proud to live her passion of engaging in human rights and disability rights and efforts and initiatives. And she both professionally and personally believes that through engaging in individual and systemic advocacy, that we can accomplish many of our goals. She's a clinical licensed social worker. We are also grateful to have Mary Knox, who is the Chief Operating Officer at the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities, and she oversees the daily operations of IAC, which provides supports services to over 160 agencies, member agencies. Mary is a clinically trained social worker. We have a lot of social workers on this panel, so let's go social workers. And she comes with years of clinical experience and leads IAC's Clinical Service Committee, overseeing issues concerned with Article 16, Article 28, IPSID, which is individual professional services for those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's a long title. And she also covers federally qualified health centers. I want to introduce our Assembly woman, Amy Paulin, who has just joined us, and she serves in the 88th New York State Assembly District, which covers Lower Westchester, so it includes Scarsdale, Edgemont, Eastchester, Bronxville, Tuckahoe, Pelham Manor, parts of New Rochelle, and White Plains. And I want to give a shout out to former Mayor of Tuckahoe, Omira Andino, who was so gracious in supporting this, in supporting the Assemblywoman's presence today. She, the Assemblywoman Paulin, ranks as the state's most productive and successful lawmakers. She has been serving in the New York State Assembly since 2001. And she chairs, which is very, very important, the Health Services Committee of the Assembly. And she is a member of also the Committee Rules and Education Committees. And last but not least, we have Latavia Sturdivant, who is a disability advocate, educator, and licensed speech language pathologist in New York and Maine. She was crowned Miss Wheelchair America 2026, and she uses both her lived experience and professional expertise to advance conversations around equity, access, and inclusive leadership. So with that, I'd like to start the discussion with Mary Knox. If you would just give us as part of the background of the clinical and health equity positions of our organizations, that would be great.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today. And Joanne, thank you so much for setting the table so nicely for the conversation we're about to have. We certainly applaud Governor Hochul and appreciate her commitment to an investment in healthcare for people with physical and intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we are so appreciative to her for that. However, we believe there's still some work to do. And there's a couple of items that we'd like attention paid to and support of to continue to be able to provide excellent medical services and therapies to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. we'd like to ask for support of the Article 28 increase from the state fiscal year of 2025 enacted budget. There was a 30% increase built into that budget that was supposed to be effective 10/1/24. However, due to multiple challenges, those monies have still not been received, and we're asking to fund the state share of the 30% increase to Article 28 clinics supporting patients with IDD in this upcoming budget, retro to 1/1/25. We're hoping in an effort to ensure continued health access for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, to have a joint licensure for Article 28 and Article 16 clinics. There has been a change, a proposed change then in the Article 16 regulations in which individuals will need to be able to access, only individuals who have received OPWDD eligibility will be able to access ongoing treatment and services. However, there are people who will not meet the criteria of eligibility under OPWDD that continue to need long-term therapies. And we're hoping that and treatment and through joint licensure, we could assist with seamless medical care for people with developmental disabilities. It's something that's been done in the Article 31 and 32 clinics and would improve access for people in need. And also to exempt long-term therapies from Medicaid managed care. And again, to people who are not able to receive or choose not to go through the eligibility process for OPWDD at this time, to take off the cap on long-term therapies such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapies, because the Article 28 currently does not recognize the difference between long-term and short-term therapies for people with IDD.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to now just move in terms of Holly Suff. You represent the Office of the Chief Disability of the Governor. And what are the major areas in the budget that your office is addressing in relation to this year's budget for healthcare for people with developmental disabilities? We'd like to open that up a little bit.
Sure,
if you could address that.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Again, my name is Holly Sopp, and I'm an associate director with the Office of the Chief Disability Officer in Governor Hochul's executive chamber. We are in the executive chamber, work through the state of the state process, right, to get our pieces to the budget. So wanted to just kind of highlight a couple of different proposals that we put forth in the state of the state that were included by the governor this year, which we are extremely excited about. One of them actually doesn't appear in the budget because there is no fiscal attached to it. So just wanted to kind of make that distinction that although there are budget components, if something doesn't have a fiscal element, such as the one piece I'm going to discuss, doesn't necessarily show in the budget, but the work is still being done. So that one is our health equity focused initiative. That is in partnership with the Department of Health Disability Health Program and the Office of the Chief Disability Officer. We are working together using existing funding in DOH, which is why it's not in the budget, to work together with in a statewide sense to get a full and robust picture of healthcare access inequities and barriers, and what are the things that we are all facing as people with disabilities and members of the disability community in terms of healthcare access. So we are launching next week. We'll be launching our kickoff of our design team process, and we'll be doing listening sessions and surveys and all sorts of things to garner input and feedback from members of the entire disability community, family members, service providers, caregivers, other state agencies, you name it. Everyone is welcome to provide input and feedback. We've realized that there is a lot of data out there, that data collection happens but it's in pockets and it's in pieces. So we want to really work to come together and have one robust set of inclusive and meaningful data points around healthcare access, and what the barriers are, so we can really focus on addressing them at a statewide level and not just piece by piece or agency by agency. So again, we are working to pull that all together, and then the end result of the process will be actual actionable items that providers, that agencies, that individuals in medical practices, in healthcare practices, in the healthcare systems can actually take to improve access and equity for people with disabilities within the healthcare system in New York State. So very, very excited about that one. We also have a number of other facets that we're working on, again, some in the budget, some not, that have to do with social determinants of health. So related to employment, related to other aspects of wellness and well-being and inclusion. So looking at assistive technology, looking at access issues for people entering the workforce or returning to the workforce or things like that. So we have a bunch of different initiatives and budget items that we are working on actively that relate to inclusion and access for people with disabilities in terms of physical health and otherwise.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Assembly Woman Amy Pauling, if you would tell us a little bit, you've been an amazing advocate for vulnerable groups of people, in particular children and adults. What are your thoughts on this present budget, and what do you think is most important for us to focus on in terms of health issues?
So I would say that the impending HR1, which is the federal cuts to New York, is going to devastate so many families and individuals and children and vulnerable people across the state. It's going to be effective for the most part January 1st, although there's some populations that are going to be losing their health insurance earlier than that. And depending on whether the federal government accepts New York's transition from a 1332 waiver to a 1331 waiver, and you don't need to know that kind of minutia, but assuming that they accept that, then we'll only see 470,000 people lose their health insurance, only. Mm-hmm. If they don't accept that, then we're going to see upwards of 1.2 million people, including many children and including many people with developmental disabilities, lose their health insurance. And without health insurance, we really can't help so many of the people who need it most. So aside from having a terrible impact on our health institutions, our neighborhood health centers, our hospitals, our private practitioners. So it's going, we're only at the very cusp of seeing a mammoth change that is going to hurt a lot of people. And New York can just do so much in terms of providing that healthcare, because it would cost us billions of dollars to take over the federal role. So we're just going to hope that we're limited to the 470,000. We're going to hope that we can help them transition to private healthcare and the exchanges, but they are, for the most part, the poorer of our population, and they will not be able to make up the cost of what it might cost on the exchange. So that's really, to me, what we're dealing with.
Right. And I think, we're going to have Latavia talk a little bit about her experiences, but we already are feeling within the field the tightening of eligibility and programs in terms of people coming into the system because of the impact of the federal government. We're aware of that. Latavia, I'd like to turn it over to you because I think as an advocate and a person who's has an extensive lived experience, why don't you give us your take on this?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. But I think what people don't know about me yet is that I am a product of early intervention, which is also being severely underfunded. So I have cerebral palsy, spastic quadriplegia, and I ambulate by wheelchair. From a very young age, I received occupational, physical, speech, and feeding therapy through early intervention. Then, after age 3, through the Article 16 clinics. The consistency and quality of those services built the foundation for my independence, my education, and my career. Now, many Article 16 clinics are struggling to remain sustainable, and discussions are underway about transitioning those services to Article 21 settings. My concern is that this shift could place caps on how frequently individuals are able to receive services within a given time frame. When reimbursements does not reflect the true cost of care, access is reduced and treatment hours are limited. And let me just say, I am one of those people that cannot qualify for OPWDD. And so the pattern doesn't stop at early intervention. We are seeing the same cycle unfold in durable medical equipment. So low Medicaid reimbursement rates have forced providers out of business. We have gone from community-based providers to a system dominated by 1 to 2 national wheelchair vendors, limiting choice, reducing competition, and prolonging repair timelines. Earlier this year, Delta damaged my wheelchair while I was traveling home from South Dakota. Although the airline agreed to cover repairs, I have now been homebound for 6 weeks, unable to go to work and unable to fully participate in my community. Not because repairs are impossible, but because our durable medical equipment system is in crisis. We are seeing nearly a 20% attrition rate in the brace and orthotics industry. JK Prosthetics and Orthotics is closing next year, and Choice Brace and Limb is struggling to remain open. We should be supporting our small businesses, not watching them shut down. So currently in our legislature, we have the Medicaid Parity Bill, which is S8838, which would require Medicaid managed care to reimburse at 100% instead of 30 to 40% of a 1987 fee rate that they're currently getting. And so I'm just asking for co-sponsorship. There is also Senator's Right to Repair bill, which I'm also asking on the Senate side and Assembly side for co-sponsorship because it would ensure that we have access to the necessary tools and parts that we need to stay independent. We are not asking for special treatment here, right? We're asking for sustainable systems because access to care and equipment is not optional. It's the foundation of our independence. And if we work together, we can protect it.
Thank you. We only have like 15 seconds left. Does anybody want to say anything or respond to what has been said on this panel? Because I think the durable medical is a case in point. The legislature voted unanimously for that bill and it was vetoed by the governor. So these are areas that really need to be addressed as we move forward. Anyone else want to say anything? Okay, we're going to transition to the next panel, but Assembly Woman Amy Poland has been gracious enough to participate in the second panel. So I'm going to hand it over to Winnie.
Thank you so much. That was a great panel, and HR1 will certainly devastate us, and we're already feeling the effects, that's for sure. Senator Fahey has that wheelchair bill that, of course, we support wholeheartedly. And I just want to say that Assembly Member Amy Poland has been a champion for our early intervention program for as long as I can remember, which is a long time, and we're grateful for all that you do to support our early intervention. Our next panel is going to be run by Kate Hoy. She's the Vice President of IAC's and Children's Services, and also she's co-chair of the Children's Committee of the Queen's DD Council, and will be the moderator for both the early intervention and education panels coming up now. Kate.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to give everyone good morning. There we are. We're all together now. I think we have two more who are joining our panel. In the meantime, I just want to let folks know, if you care about kids, you should be concerned about what's happening with early intervention in New York State. It's hard not to start with a figure that we're all pretty familiar with. We hear it in the news and from advocacy groups. Any way you slice it, New York State ranks among the lowest in the nation for timely delivery of early intervention services. We have infants and toddlers across New York State who are not receiving evaluations and services in a timely manner, and providers are leaving the field in droves. Our budget paper this year, which I put in the chat earlier, emphasizes an invest now or pay later philosophy, noting that 42% of children who receive early intervention don't end up needing special education services by the time they reach kindergarten. And a recent JAMA article actually compared reading and math scores of third graders with IEPs who did and did not receive early intervention services. And it shows the longitudinal impact that early intervention can have on a child's life. So we know it works, but New York State has not prioritized the necessary investments. And to help us navigate these challenges and to talk about our budget priorities and the state of the early intervention system in New York, we're joined by a terrific panel that represents every facet of the system. So still with us is Assemblymember Amy Paulin from New York's Assembly District 88, Chair of the Committee on Health and a member of the Education Committee. Welcome. Also a champion of rate reform in Albany, which we are going to talk about. I'm also so pleased to welcome a colleague and someone we work with all the time here in New York City, Nora Puffett. She's Director of Administration and Data with the New York City Bureau of Early Intervention, and she's currently Acting Assistant Commissioner of the Bureau. Nora has been with the Bureau for 15 years, and that's following 4 years in New York City DOH-OMH Division of Mental Hygiene. So welcome, Nora. Finally, and most importantly, the families and advocates at the heart of this work, Edie DiDomenico Weber, Family Vice Chair of the Bronx DD Council and Vice President of Day and Employment Services for AHRC NYC. And Danielle Lanzetta. Danielle is a lifelong advocate. She's president of both the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State and the Bronx Community Self-Advocacy Group. She is a LEND, which is Leadership Education and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities Program at the Rose F. Kennedy Center at Einstein and Montefiore, and she participates in numerous local and state advisory committees. Danielle lives in the Bronx with her family. So without further ado, let's dive in. Question 1 to Assemblymember Paulin. Your leadership as chair of the Health Committee and your relentless advocacy for children have been a lifeline for our families. And while we know that there are massive systemic hurdles to tackle in the upcoming budget, we want to start by acknowledging some of the progress that's been made. So what is one recent legislative win or perhaps a shift in the conversation that you've seen up in Albany, something that gives you optimism about the future of early intervention in New York?
So I've been involved with the early intervention program really since before I became a legislator. I had followed the issue at the Westchester County level and understood then, as we've seen, unfortunately, the problem only get exacerbated. That providers, that the system of paying providers and the system that was then very problematic because the insurance companies were not reimbursing, so the counties were not paying timely to the providers. They were struggling, to keep pace with the families for years. It's been going on for years. So when I became a legislator, I called together in my naivete, the health chair at the time, Dick Godfrey, the insurance chair, Pete Granis, I think the person who led the task force on people with disabilities, Kevin Cahill, and we had a meeting, and we had thought that if we did covered lives which is an automatic assessment, and then gave that money to the county, that it would work smoother and it would be able to be used to help providers, especially state as providers. So I passed that bill, took me years, finally passed that bill. And we're still having some struggles with it, but I do think it's a better, more seamless system of reimbursing. But the rates are so inadequate. So after nearly 2 decades with virtually no rate increases, the 2024 state budget included a 5% increase for EI providers, as well as a 4% modifier for providers in underserved areas. The 5% increase was intended to be retroactive to April 1st, 2024. However, the state failed to submit the necessary state plan amendment for the 5% increase in time. So the increase, once it's approved, because it still has not been approved by CMS, with federal agency, will only be retroactive till October 1st, 2024. So that's hope, because we will finally see that rate increase after all this time. I don't know that it's enough to bring providers back, but hopefully it's enough so that we won't lose even more. I also have another bill. For those of you who are into the bill numbers, it's 283. And it would require a comprehensive review of the state's program, which is very, very critical. In recent years, the governor's tried to make certain administrative actions to save costs, like eliminating back-to-back sessions and lowering group sizes. Fortunately, the legislature, along with the advocates, have fought back many of those actions. If the governor wants to make changes to the program, she needs to support the bill that we worked on together, which would require a comprehensive review that allows stakeholders, parents, providers, advocates to weigh in on the needs of the program. Early intervention is one of the smartest investments we can make. When children receive services early, they are more likely to succeed in school and require fewer supports later. We must ensure that the system works for every child who is eligible. A comprehensive review of the program is really the next step.
I see all the clapping. We feel you. Thank you. Yes. And a really great overview of that 5%, which we're fighting hard for, to have the state implement the state share, at least to get something started for us.
I will say one more thing.
Please.
I think that, because of your advocacy, the legislature, I can only speak for the assembly because that's the house I sit in. The assembly is very aware of the needs, and I think you're going to be very pleased with the one House Assembly budget when it gets released on late Monday afternoon, and because we're putting additional resources in for EI.
Well, wonderful to hear. I'm ready to go celebrate everyone. We've got more work to do, so I want to see those one clicks that everyone should be calling. But thank you so much, Assemblywoman Pollen. That's incredible. Nora, Acting Commissioner Puffett, we're here to discuss the budget and advocacy priorities. We know that New York City BEI has been working tirelessly on the ground. To start us off, from New York City's perspective, on a positive note, could you highlight one or two successes or innovations that the Bureau has seen over the last year that's improved the experience for New York City families? And if my colleagues could help Nora unmute. There we go.
All right, thank you. Before I even start, Kate, I can't tell you how happy it's making me this morning. All this feedback. It's so great to hear people say how they benefited, that their families benefited. Thank you so much. Absolutely. In New York City, we've been doing a lot, and it's been all about enhancing access, making sure that every child who needs a referral to EI can get one. So I want to highlight two different things we've been doing to leverage technology to help us do that. The first is that our big excitement for 2025 was that we unrolled the New York City EI referral portal. So until now, if you wanted to refer to New York City EI, you had to call 311 or send a fax. In 2026, Many families are more comfortable with going online and submitting their information. So we enrolled it in October 25, and it's been a huge success. Anyone can use it. Families use it. All kinds of providers use it. Childcare. It's on New York City Health. It's in multiple languages. It's quick. It's secure. It's confidential. And then we at EI get the information faster, and that means we can reach out to the families sooner. And we know that the sooner we reach them, the more likely they are to follow through on that referral. So this has been wonderful. It's also available on your phone, which makes it accessible to almost everyone, which is just great. We get about 28,000 referrals a year. In the first 4 months, we got 4,000 referrals through the referral portal. Having said that, I do want to make one point. If you are somebody who would still rather talk to a person, you can still always call 311 and ask for early intervention. Okay. The other project I wanted to mention was our project that just keeps getting bigger and better, the Electronic Health Records to Early Intervention project. And this is something we're doing with the city's hospital system, Health and Hospitals, and 4 other major hospital systems in New York City. It's at 56 sites citywide. We're reaching thousands of kids every year. What this does is allow the practitioner to refer the child to EI straight out of the electronic health record. This is a huge incentive for health providers to refer, because when you've got that short visit and every minute counts, if you can do it quickly and easily, you are much more likely to refer right then. This is a great thing. And we've been able to share back information about the child's progress in EI, but we've been doing that manually. Soon, we're going to be able to do it electronically. We're going to push the progress report into the electronic health record. The doctor will be able to see it at their visits, but they will also be able to see if something's not moving forward, and then they can reach out to the family. That is a great way to get more support to families in the EI process. So what I want to say is that with all of this, we have really made progress with referrals.
It's wonderful to hear, and I think it's just so key and critical to have the data perspective, the systems perspective. Turning to our family members and our self-advocates, it's so critical to understand the mechanics of the budget, but on the ground, what do the numbers mean on a daily basis? And for some perspective, Danielle, starting with you, looking back, how did that early investment change the trajectory of your life?
So for me, I was born 40 plus years ago with cerebral palsy, spastic quadriplegia. And when I initially went for treatment, I was sent for treatment late at 1 year of age. But once I was on EI, I started receiving OT, PT, speech, and positioning care so that my mom knew better ways how to handle me. I learned how to hold my head up, how to write, how to get prepared for what was to come in school. And without it, honestly, I don't know if I would be half the person I am right now, because I would be so much worse. That 3-year window is critical in that from 0 to 3 years of age, 75% of brain growth takes place. Your brain connects and makes connections so that if a damaged part of your body is not working, other changes within your physiology take place so you can learn to do things like grab a pen or feed yourself or even hold your head up. But it is critical, and it is a small window. So unless children get access to early intervention, you run the risk of losing gains simply because there are long wait lists that don't need to be. We need to open more EI programs to help the numbers of children. I think when I gave this talk last year, it was somewhere around 70,000 infants and toddlers that need services. And now it's even more.
Danielle, I just want to say thank you so much. Your perspective is the most important, and you're absolutely right. Those 0 to 3 is the most important time. Those first 1,000 days. I know that we are running short on time. So Edie, same question. What was your experience, and why did it mean? Why is it so important for us to invest now? I think based on your experience.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm here today not only as a professional who has spent 35 years working in the field of IDD, but as a parent. I'm the proud mother of a 27-year-old son with autism. When my son was about 18 months old, I began to notice that he was not developing the same way my other children had. He wasn't talking, he was having difficulty walking, and many of the developmental milestones we expect in toddlers were delayed. Like many parents, I trusted my instincts and began the evaluation process through early intervention. At that time, more than 26 years ago, autism was not as widely diagnosed or understood as it is today, so my son was initially diagnosed with developmental delays. He was approved for early intervention services, and we developed an individualized family service plan. He qualified for occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. But despite being approved for services, my son never received them. I could not find a center-based program that had openings. I could not find therapists willing to come to our home. When providers heard the case was located in the Bronx, they declined. So even though my son was eligible for services, and even though research clearly shows that early intervention leads to better outcomes for children, his needs went unmet. It wasn't until he transitioned into preschool special education that he finally began receiving services. What's most troubling to me is that 26 years later, many families are facing the same barriers I experienced. We still have a shortage of providers. We still have communities where children are approved for services but cannot access them. And we still have families struggling to secure the support their children are legally entitled to receive. Early intervention can change the trajectory of a child's life, as we heard Danielle tell us. But eligibility alone is not enough. Access must follow. No family should hear that their child qualifies for services and then spends months or years unable to receive them. My story is not unique, and that is exactly why conversations like this panel are so important. We must continue working together to strengthen the early intervention system so that every child, regardless of where they live, has access to the service they need during the most critical years of development. Early intervention should not be a promise on paper. It must be a service delivered to every child who needs it.
Both Danielle and Edie, thank you so much. I have so many more questions, but I think we are about out of time for this panel. If one of my colleagues could let me know. Okay, 40 seconds. I just wanted to say thank you so much. If there's something, Assemblymember Pollen and anyone here, is there something that we can do to get some of our asks over the finish line here in the last days before the one House budgets are due? Or anyone, Acting Assistant Commissioner Nora Puffett, if you want to tell us, we'd really appreciate any thoughts that you might have.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I put in the chat, like most of what I wanted to say has been said.
Great.
So it's been great. Thank you.
Okay.
It's an invaluable service.
Say it again, Danielle.
It's an invaluable service that
Exactly.
there needs to be more of.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we agree.
Okay. Well, it's great to be on this panel. For everyone here, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your thoughtful conversation and leadership, and especially thank you to Edie and Danielle. Your stories remind us what's at stake, and we're really talking about access and equity for people with disabilities and the future of New York. So thank you so much. I put an article in the chat. Please complete the one clicks. But again, thank you so much, everyone.
So
transitioning
Kate
now. Yes, go ahead, Winnie.
Yes, no, I just wanted to say we're sticking with Kate.
Rolling right along as we get our new panel all lined up. The good and bad thing about going last is that I'm fully caffeinated. Welcome, Senator Mayer. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I'm sorry to be in the car.
Not a problem at all. We're just happy you're here. And I'll get started. I know Marjorie is here. We're waiting also for Assemblyman Benedetto, but I'm Kate Hoy. I'm Vice President of Children's Services at IAC and also on the Queen's Council Children's Services Committee. I have the privilege of moderating this critical conversation today as well. Today, we're focusing on a cornerstone of our community, the 4410 Special Education Preschool and 853 School Age Special Education Programs. So if you don't know, these schools serve students with the most complex, highest support needs. They fulfill the mandate of a free, appropriate public education when local school districts cannot. So as a state, we're standing on the threshold of generational transformation in education and childcare with universal childcare. But just to be clear, a universal system that structurally disadvantages children with disabilities is not universal, it's exclusionary. So despite recent progress, and we absolutely support universal childcare, of course, our schools remain critically underfunded. Today, we're going to discuss the 2027 budget priorities, especially that ETTP, Excessive Teacher Turnover Prevention Program, to support our workforce, and also what's going on with FAPE 22? How can we ensure students receive state aid through the end of the school year in which they turn 22? So to explore these priorities and what they mean for our state, I'm honored to introduce two tireless champions for education in Albany, Senator Shelley Mayer, who represents Senate District 37, just north of New York City, Yonkers, Eastchester, and she's chair of the Senate Education Committee since 2019, I believe, and also Assemblyman Michael Benedetto, who represents District 87 in the Bronx. Assemblyman Benedetto, I love that you are a former student council president, as well as you were a teacher for, I believe, more than 35 years, teacher and administrator, and you're also chair of the Assembly Education Committee. So we are so incredibly fortunate to be joined by also Marjorie Antoine, who's provider vice chair of the Brooklyn DD Council and vice president of education at Birch Family Services.
Can I jump in real quick? I'm so sorry, but Assemblymember Benedetto was unable to stay. He was with us for a while, but he wants us to know that he supports all of our initiatives 100%. He's been behind us forever, and he'll continue in that way. So excuse me for interrupting.
No problem at all. We just saw him up in Albany, so we know we have his support and we appreciate it. But I'll ask everyone here to continue to contact him just to let him know how much you value these priorities. So, Senator Mayer, thank you for your ongoing leadership on the Education Committee. Just to start us off, could you share a recent educational success or investment from the past year that you're most proud of?
Well, I just would say right now, I just left the visit with St. Joseph's School for the Deaf in the Bronx. And particularly their early childhood threes and fours class. And I guess our collective biggest success was finally getting foundation aid paid to traditional public schools and finally getting more attention to the special needs community in education. For the years that I was in the Assembly, I was first the chair of the subcommittee on special needs. And that was the year that we really started to ensure that both the 4410s and the 853s and all the other schools that serve these children at least got on the block of things that were attended to by the state. They were frankly ignored for many years. So we're making up for a long time of really lack of investment. And so I'm happy that we've come a long way, as you said, but we have a long way to go. So one thing that I'm very concerned about is the EI reimbursement. EI providers were promised more by a budget agreement that we made that the state was going to apply for this waiver and there was going to be more money. That didn't happen. And then the rates didn't increase. Many EI providers closed, and there's a ridiculous waiting list for EI providers. And something that I'm sensitive to as a parent and grandparent, the push towards virtual EI assistance. And I just don't see how you do that effectively. And I think we ought to make every effort to ensure that as much is done is in person and by qualified providers. So I'm hopeful in our One House budget and in the Assembly One House budget, there's some additional money for EI as well as money for the schools, the 4410s, and the other schools that we need to have reimbursed adequately enough to continue to provide services. I can't promise what we're going to have. People should understand, I think your members do, the governor holds most of the cards in this conversation. We have to add, based on a very modest amount of money that we're allocated to add to the budget, and we can change some things that she's done, but only by negotiation. We can't will them to be changed. So your emphasis on the Senate and Assembly is wise, but you also have to lean on the governor's office, because at the end of the day, it has to be a three-way agreement. So the one house budgets that come out on Monday, hopefully, will have some improvements for these schools and for these kids, most importantly. But then we have more fighting to do.
You know what? We're focused on this year, fully focused, and thank you so much for your support for early intervention. I think everyone's also hearing that we're thinking about next year already, right? So we need to start thinking about how we're going to advocate then. So let's talk about the educators and therapists who make the programs run. State aid to school districts has increased significantly over the years. We just talked about that, but our programs have fallen further behind, which makes it unbelievably difficult to recruit and retain staff who are among the highest trained, among the most experienced, ideally, in order to support these students. So, and also people forget our programs are 12-month programs compared to 10-month school years of public schools. Marjorie, you're an educator. How is this? You're an administrator. You're all these things. How is this disparity and the resulting staff turnover directly impacting students and families that you serve?
Well, Kate, thank you for the opportunity to engage in these meaningful conversations facing our IDD and special needs community. And, as a parent, as an educator, as an administrator, direct impact is provider shortages and turnover. We are in a position where we are not able to retain special education teachers, support services such as speech therapists, occupational therapists, and other really needed support services, and provide continuity of care for our students. So that translates directly into significant delays in care. So that means that children are not receiving timely evaluation services. Children are waiting for services, pending services, or never receive those needed services to perhaps the end of the year. And we know that all of that creates disparity, not only in terms of providing the services to the students, but also in outcomes. And our goal as providers is to ensure that our students have the best experience and the best outcomes, because this is a trajectory in terms of education. And we know, as we stated before, in terms of early intervention, the earlier the care, the earlier the intervention, the better the outcomes for our students. So for us, it's really sleepless nights, knowing that we're not able to provide the needed services that's part of our mandate, that's part of all of our mission. And this not being able to fund ETTP in particular, which would be a lifeline to many of our employees who would like to continue their education and would like to be able to be a part of the community, but cannot do so because of economic constraints, is, I think, a detriment to the infrastructure of special education services throughout New York City and the state, and will adversely impact us in the future. So we need that investment to be made so that we can continue to provide the types of services that providers want to provide and work in partnership with the DOE so that those services are continued and folks are being served.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. Senator, to continue with that, ETTP has been a very important program. The funding for it at $8 million has been stagnant for the past 7 years. Again, we are grateful for it. It serves, high need schools with high teacher turnover. We're asking for $10 million, $5 million to grow the pot of dollars available for our certified special education teachers, and an additional $5 million so we can extend that to those, related service therapists, speech, OTPT, social workers, school psychologists, teachers' aides, teachers' assistants. We need to keep our staff in our schools supporting our students. Is there can we count on your support to champion that specific workforce investment in the upcoming budget?
Well, you have my support to do the best we can. But the question, we're also, first place, thank you, Marjorie, for that, and I think that one of the advantages of having so many younger members in the Senate and Assembly is they really get this firsthand. If these kids don't have this at the early age, they are behind really for a lifetime. And so it's so critical. I mean, I just was in a class of 3s and 4s of students with deafness and hearing loss, profound hearing loss. And if they don't get the literacy training that they would have if they were fully hearing, they're not going to do well in kindergarten and in first grade and read by third grade. So I get that, and a lot of my colleagues get it. You have my support, but you also have my honesty that we are limited by how much money is going to be available to add to the budget. So even if what you want is not in the one houses, you got to keep up the pressure, because you got to keep up the pressure to see if it can be added during the budget negotiation period. So I will do my best. I'm not making promises. I am one person, and a lot of the issues in this area, particularly with some of the schools, go into other areas of the budget other than education, human services, etc. And I think my colleagues are fully on board, but I don't want to promise what I don't know will be in there. I haven't seen the final of this document, and I have no idea what's in the assembly. So what's in or what's not in, it should not stop us until we get to the end.
Thank you. First of all, don't sell yourself short. You are one person, but with tremendous influence and tremendous leadership, and we're really grateful for that. You make excellent points. The budget season is short. Our advocacy has to be long and continuous, right?
Yes.
We thank you. Too often, we have these short sprints, or they don't feel short. They're not that short, but it doesn't end whenever folks go home in June. So, or when we have a budget in April. So thank you so much. I wonder if, again, I'd like to ask about FAPE 22. We know that these students who are turning 22 are really in a gap, but also their schools are, right? We can't budget, we can't hire the correct staff. How do you support FAPE 22? How can we get that across the finish line?
I totally support it. I mean, to me, it's crazy. The mandate is 22, and the schools are complying, except that some kid has a birthday in, January 22nd, then they're out because the school didn't get any money from January to the end of the year. It is very broken. That being said, the state education department, the regents recommended funding through FAPE 22. I have tried. I am not confident that the governor's office is willing, or, that we're likely to get there this year. This is going to be a multi-year effort. In part because we are dependent on a Connecticut case saying that we have to educate these kids, and everybody is doing it. But probably until we get to a sort of crisis, which we're in, and the governor's office understands how challenging this is to educate a kid till 22 without any funding after 21. Yes, and teacher stability matters. I'm not arguing the merits. I'm talking about the politics of getting the money. I think it continues to be an uphill climb. But I have requested it, and I would hope we get there, but I'm nervous about that one.
Yeah, it's going to take some time, and to your point, maybe, it's a lawsuit. It's a problem, right? And so
every tool is in your arsenal. And I think sometimes I would just say honestly, a reluctance to buck the bureaucracy, because you're dependent on them for other money and approvals and all that. But sometimes you got to do what you have to do in this business. And I'm not saying you should sue or anything like that, but the world does not end if we're friends about some things and we're adversaries about others.
let's leave it there. Thank you so much. Really excellent advice.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you both so much. Just want to extend a deep thank you to Senator Mayer, your leadership in Albany, and here even for our community. Thank you so much. It's essential. We really look forward to partnering with you on FAPE 22, ETDP, all kinds of funding now and in the future. And Marjorie, for the work that you and so many teachers, teaching assistants, aides, therapists, social workers, administrators that you do every day. Thank you. You're making the vision a reality. So we're so grateful for your commitment to students. Thank you to the Developmental Disabilities Councils for hosting this forum. I know we're almost out of time, so I'm going to put some more one clicks in the chat. Please keep advocating. You heard the senator. We have more work to do. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Kate. And I just heard that it's Senator Mayer's birthday today. So
happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
Happy birthday!
It's a good way to celebrate. Talking to you. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate that.
Bye,
Great
Winnie. Thank you.
conversations today. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and all of our moderators. I want to thank Selena Ornelas from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries' office for joining us today also. It's been just a great conversation. And now I'd like to turn it over to Brian Rothenstein for the DD Council remarks, and Brian will be putting the DD Council websites in the chat for anybody who would like to follow up.
Thank you, Winnie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Rothenstein. I'm the chairperson of the Brooklyn DD Council and the CEO of Everyone New York, formerly Heaven's Hand Community Services. As Winnie said, I just put the links to each of the 5 boroughs council's websites in the chat. And today's town hall is a collaboration between Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Staten Island, and the Bronx. Each borough's developmental disabilities councils function as a local advisory body established under New York State's Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, OPWDD. Each council has its own website, monthly general meetings, and subcommittees throughout each month. Each council also holds special events throughout the year, such as family support fairs, town halls like this, informational sessions, and other events through each borough. The councils are made up fully of volunteers, including self-advocates, family members, service providers, community stakeholders, and OPWDD representatives. Our purpose is to provide a forum for community input on local service needs, system challenges, and emerging priorities. In short, the councils serve as a bridge between the developmental disabilities community and state oversight, helping ensure services are responsive, equitable, and aligned with local needs. We also work very closely with the family support councils. And if you aren't already, please consider joining the council from your specific borough, attend the meetings, participate in events. Aside from benefiting from the information at our meetings, we hold great events throughout the year, and most are free for families and self-advocates. And like I said, the links to our websites are in the chat, and I will pass it back to Winnie to close out today's amazing event. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. So this is an important time of year. The legislature and the governor are working to finalize the state budget, and they are going to decide what New York State's priorities are for the coming year. With 20 million people in the state, there are lots of needs and many groups competing to have their voices heard. Our legislators support us, as you've heard today, but we can't take for granted that they know what we need. And we only have between now and April 1st, that is just 3.5 weeks, to educate them and give them reasons to include our priorities in the final budget. Now, there's one thing I know about us, and that is when we speak together, we move mountains. And here is what you can do. So we have links to pre-written one-click letters outlining our priorities for OPWDD services, early intervention, preschool and school-age programs, and also clinical services. And I know Kate has put links in the chat. She's also put links to other information. We have some position papers in the chat for you to read up a little bit more on what our priorities are. And it literally takes less than 5 minutes to send emails to your assembly member, your senator, and the governor, and you don't even need to know who they are or what their addresses are, because it's all pre-populated when you put in your address there. So you can also call and visit your legislators. As we heard earlier, visiting people in district is a great time to actually capture their attention when the crowds in Albany are not distracting them. And you can use those one-click letters and also the resources that Kate put in the chat as a guide to your discussions. And also, if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to your DD councils and get more information on those things. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. When we work together, we get it done.